Cool. So do you remember when you applied for, maybe not for Unlocked, you filled out the application form and we kept a space on one of the sessions to just make sure we were catering for what you actually wanted. And quite a few of you said you wanted A&R. So we found the amazing Dean Bryce, who is, well, would you like to introduce yourself, Dean?
Hey guys, I'm Dean Bryce, founder of Don't Sleep. And Don't Sleep is a record label and management company. And I guess one of my roles in the business is A&R. The company's about 5 years old, but I've been working in music for 25 years now.
What exactly is A&R?
A&R, I guess there isn't really a broad definition of A&R, but essentially, you're the middle person between the artist and the label. Your role is to go out and find new talent, then develop talent, help them release their records, if it's an album, EP or single. But also your role, which is really spoken about, is in the label. Your role is to make the label excited about the artist, to kind of make sure the marketing team are really excited and everyone really is into the music.
Okay, so you said, how long have you been working in the industry, would you say?
25 years.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
How did you first get into it? Like, what was that first role? Was it a side project?
It was an accident, actually.
Happy accident.
Happy accident. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I worked in a record shop called HMV, as you know, it's a big record store in Oxford Circus. It was a Sunday, and a guy came to the counter. He was buying an MJ Cole single. I was a big Garage fan at the time. I was talking to him. Turned out he managed MJ Cole, and he gave me his phone number. I was doing my A-levels, so I was 18 at the time. So I then called him after my A-levels, went to his office, went straight to a car, to a record label. I'm 19 now. I'm like nervous, sitting at a label table. Like, what am I doing? I was meeting him to get some free records, then going home. So we're at a label now. They're trying to get the MJ Cole album eligible for the Mercury Prize. They're all like baffled, thinking of ways to go and do it. Me, as a young guy working in retail, I had an idea of releasing the import version first. They loved the idea, and he employed me.
Wow, so you were like, I've got this banging idea. Can I talk to you about it? And he was like, yeah.
More than a kind of nervous, kind of 18-year-old, like, I've got an idea, how about you do this? And he managed MJ Cole Roots Maneuver. He was called Chus, and he was my mentor in the business.
So that initial relationship or that kickoff in HMV, and we were chatting about this, about like, you never really know who you're going to meet. And like,
Absolutely.
that is like serendipitous. You were like, wait now, did you already know MJ Cole at the time, or like how?
I was a huge MJ Cole fan, and I think he employed me because I was a garage obsessive. So I knew all the producers, not personally, but I knew their sound. I knew what they were making. And the fact that I was so plugged in, he needed me to kind of be his ears on the street.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what age were you? Did they employ you full time?
No, that was part-time. I was university, because I always wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't even want to work in music.
Oh, so you're still trying to be a lawyer at this point?
Yeah, I was like, I'm still going to be a lawyer, but I'll help you out. This is mad fun. So I'm at uni. I'm going there like every Thursday, I think, helping him out, going to record labels, going to the MOBO Awards. He managed MJ Cole Roots Maneuver and a couple of others. He really taught me about the business. I think management is a great way to understand everything from a bird's eye view, from publishing, recording, live, and marketing, etc.
Okay, and so what happened next, career pathwise?
So after working with Chus, I worked in Sync, a company called I10Q, and the biggest thing we did was the Cadbury's Gorilla commercial. There's a guy in a monkey suit playing that. So I cleared that track for a big agency. I think it was BBH. Then...
Hang on, so just on Sync then, for those of people who don't know, what exactly is Sync?
Synchronization, or sync as it's called, is basically when you place music on a film, a video game, or a TV commercial. So it's run alongside that. It pays very well, so all the artists are fighting for syncs. You've got a lot of sync agencies who will pitch your music. But yeah, it's a way to get your music on films, games, etc. Okay,
so how did you get from part-time work into that direction?
Actually, I've forgotten a step, actually. So after working with Chus,
I completely
forgot. I worked at BMG Records. It was then a major label. I was a marketing assistant. So I worked on Outkast, Love Below record in the UK as marketing assistant, and Alicia Keys and some Faithless, a lot of stuff in the UK. Then after that, I got into Sync.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. So you've had like lots of different jobs.
Oh, yeah. I think like there's like 5 pivotal jobs in music that I really rate to kind of got me where I am now.
Okay, what are they?
So after that, it was Ninja Tune. At Ninja Tune, I joined as Sync initially. Then I realised I had great ears, and I was made A&R almost immediately. So at Ninja, I signed Peggy Goo. I found her on SoundCloud.
You found Peggy on SoundCloud?
Yeah, on SoundCloud. Yeah,
Okay.
one of her. I DM'd her on SoundCloud. Then she replied. She had a gig in London. She was still a DJ, but a smaller DJ. We had a coffee in Pret a Manger in Old Street. She was asking what an advance was. I explained, this is an advance. This is blah blah. Signed her, and we put out an EP on my label Imprint Technicolor on Ninja Tune. I've signed Hieroglyphic Being, Actress, Lego Well, a couple of Mercury Prize artists I brought in, Young Fathers, Speech to Bell, Full EDL, and a couple more.
Okay, so let's go back to just the A&R side where you are actively looking for like new music and people. Like how are you doing that? That's obviously something that's not just like, I'm going to turn SoundCloud on at 9 and finish at 5. It doesn't work like that, right?
The key to successful A&R is being curious, right? So when I was trying to find Actress, I was really in a mood to go and find techno. I was like, I want to find something exciting that I've not heard before. I was in a mood. With Peggy, I was just browsing SoundCloud, literally just browsing, found something interesting, and DM'd her. But the key is being curious. One of my favorite A&R tips is always to speak to other artists, because they have artist friends. So talk to other artists, ask them what they're playing, if they've got any mates who make music. Just always be curious. It could be through a friend of yours, online, at a show. Just be open.
Dean, we're not doing tips till the end.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Forget that.
Yeah, scrap that. So your current job, if you do an A&R with Ninja Tune, and what happens after that?
Then
how long are you in these roles for?
10 years. Ninja Tune, I was 10 years.
10 years, wow.
A whole decade. So then I had my own Imprint Technicolor, because after a while at Ninja, I was like, I've signed Mercury Prize winning artists. I've signed underground artists like Actress. Where do I go now? I need my own imprint.
But also, like, if you're going into A&R with Ninja, where do you start in order to be part of that, like, 10-year? You're not going in and just booking Mercury Awards.
I started because I wasn't the hugest fan of the roster when I joined. So I'm not going to name any names, but I wasn't really a fan of that sound. As a young black guy from South London, it didn't resonate with me, some of the stuff that I was working on Sync. So I thought, I've got ideas to make the label a little bit more contemporary. And I think that trend is still running now. Now they've got Barry Can't Swim and all this stuff. And before, I think I was the catalyst to make them think, let's run with some current stuff and not look back at the old material. But my thing was like, I want to sign artists that I'd buy their records.
Yeah.
So that was my catalyst.
So were you an A&R assistant at that point and working with someone else?
No, just straight up A&R. Went from Sync to A&R. I was the first full-time sole A&R at Ninja Tune. So they had other A&Rs, but they were A&R, office manager, A&R, CEO. I was the first only A&R in the company history.
And what skills do you reckon you had then? And they were like, okay, we see that in you, and that's why we need you in this team.
I think because I was looking back at my career, a lot of my roles have been curatorial. Mm-hmm. It's basically like Sync, I'm finding songs for adverts. Even if you're DJing, you're playing to a crowd and trying to make them dance. A&R, I might have an A&R brief from my bosses. They might say, we want the latest electronic or rap artist, and I've got a brief, so I try and fulfill that brief. Mm-hmm. But I think they made me A&R because I was always out, really. I was always out and curious. And there wasn't anybody then at the company with that skill set.
So can we think about what like a typical day might look like in an A&R role? Is there a typical day?
No, there isn't, because it's so varied. A&R, right, it can be the most exciting job, finding artists at award shows, or the loneliest job on a train on your own, going to a gig in a pub and watching a band. So there isn't really a typical day. You could be in a studio, it's all, if you love music, you'll do it, and it's all about the passion. But there are days when I've been in Brighton at like 11 o'clock on a train at night, on a midweek, bored, feeling alone, but I'm doing it because I want to go and sign this artist. Or another example was I was at an EDM festival in Pennsylvania, in the same place where they filmed The Office in the US, and it was dead. And I was in a hotel for like 3 days at a festival in a mountain on my own, watching these EDM kids trying to sign artists, and I was a bit depressed, a bit sad, you know, it's kind of going out. But it's your job, and you love music, so it's my role to be sociable, to go backstage, talk to artists and their management, and then report back to the company a week later.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. You're doing 10 years of A&R.
Yeah.
Towards the end, is your day-to-day is any different to what it was when you first joined, or what did you see changing in the industry at that point?
It was kind of the same, really. You know, the day-to-day is literally you might arrive late because you were at a show the night before.
How many shows were you going to a week?
Oh, I don't know, really. A lot. But also...
But I guess you're out, right?
Yeah, I'm out a lot. Yeah. And being out is the thing. It's not always about being at shows, but being out is the thing. You know, you could be out at your friends' gigs. It's really about being present and seeing what people are listening to, finding out what the current zeitgeist is, finding out what people are playing. Play NTS, play your favorite show on Radio 1, and rinse. Just basically be curious and know what's going on is the key. And also, I think with A&R, it's a thing about being culturally plugged in. So what the current trends are, not only in music, but just like in society. Where are we going? I think those are the skills that keep you plugged in as a human being on a cultural level.
Amazing. And so, okay, 10 years at Ninja Tune, where do you go after that?
So after that, I was like, I can't do anything else. Like, the next thing is like to try and sign an Adele, right? Because it's like, I've done the underground stuff. So Boiler Room. Went to Boiler Room as head of music.
Amazing. And what does that job entail?
That job basically entailed running the music team globally. All the guys and all the people who book the talent globally, all the shows, is that. So my role basically was to give each quarter of the year a focus, whether it's focusing on queer collectives or music in South Africa or music, whether it's doing, or it's like hard dance music, we gave each quarter a focus and would book talent.
And so how do you build a team around you within that? Like, what are you looking for?
A Boiler Room?
Yeah.
Luckily, I joined with a team already there.
Okay.
But I did employ some of my old colleagues from Ninja Tune, and I basically want people who are passionate about music, who are plugged in, and also who know about electronic music, because at Boiler Room, it's really about electronic music. So people who know about DJs and who are just, again, who are curious.
We always say that at RA as well. It's like easier to teach someone a skill than it is to teach someone to love dance music.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so are you still at Boiler Room now?
No, obviously no. I'm a don't sleep.
Okay,
But
we're getting there.
Yeah, what I found at Boiler Room was great, loved it. But what I found at Boiler Room, it was because my roles were so hands-on previously, right? So it was management, hands-on with the artists in the studio, A&R, very hands-on with A&Ring artists. Boiler Room, you do like a few shows a week, but you're not so hands-on. You book the artist, then they go and do their own thing. So I kind of felt it wasn't meaty enough for me. It kind of felt like we'd book the artist, do a show, it could be a branded show, whatever, then on to the next show. But I like projects. I like A&Ring for 9 months for an album, you know, trying to sign an artist for a year. For Actress, it took me about almost a year and a half to go and sign him.
Can we talk about that process of like A&R in like a record, for example?
Yeah.
What does that look like from start to finish?
Well, let me start with Actress first of all. So I was very curious about techno at the time. Went to HMV, weirdly enough, and bought his first album, Hazyville. Loved it. Saw he was playing in Brixton. Went to go and see him. I thought he was from Detroit or somewhere. It turned out he lived 2 roads from me in South Norwood. So I was like, great, he's local. Was emailing him, hanging out with him. He wasn't sure about doing a deal yet. He had a deal with Honest Johns at the time, who put out Splash. And then after a while, he was like, Dean, let's do it. So when you're into an artist, it really helps if you're a fan, I believe. So with Actress, I was a huge fan of his music. We're also good friends as well. But I really wanted to understand his process. Also, another A&R tip, I know we're not on tips yet, but if you've got any technical skills, it really helps you to understand their work. You can say, okay, more of this, less of that. But my role as an A&R is always to bring the most out of the artist. And sometimes that can be encouragement and being hands-off and saying, that's great, more of that, please, you know. So what I find is the more you have your fingerprints on the project, the more you A&R, the kind of worse it is, because it's more of you. The best A&R is light A&R, when the project is good and you're gently guiding them, when you're heavy-handed saying, I want this and I want that, most times it won't work. So, gentle A&R is the way forward. I think you don't want to basically make it your project, it's their project.
Yeah, they're creatives, but you're there to like support
Exactly.
and encourage and nurture
Exactly.
it.
I always say the analogy in management and A&R is they're driving and you're reading the map.
Ooh, map reader. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay, so do you want to talk about that path into like releasing a record as well?
Yeah. So the path is you find an artist who you like. The challenge then is to go and sign them. And I kind of correlate that almost to like meeting a new partner. You've got to be keen, but not too keen, right? So you've got to obviously try and sign them, not be in their face all day, but show interest. Once you've signed them, then you've got to work out, okay, what's first? Are we doing a single? Are we doing an EP? Are we doing an album?
And what does to sign them actually mean? Who are you talking to on their behalf?
Sometimes it's direct. Sometimes it's via management. And, the biggest A&R skill, I think, isn't having the best ears. It's really important having ears. It's people skills, right? It doesn't matter if you're first on the scene and you found an artist. If no one likes you, it's not going to work. So I think being genuine is a real thing. Having a passion for music is important. Having a heart, caring about music is very, very, very important. So after that, basically, it's normally like about a year-long process working on an album. They'll send you some sketches. You'll find out what the album's about. Is there a story to be told? Because I don't think it's worth putting out any music without there being a reason for it, a rationale, a story. So I'll find out what the album title is, like in early days, what their vision is. Then my role is to amplify that vision. They get an advance from doing a deal. They can buy studio gear or go on holiday and get inspiration, whatever it takes to get their thoughts and emotions onto a record.
So you've got to have quite a lot of confidence as well, right, in this decision?
Absolutely, absolutely. I always say to other A&Rs in A&R meetings, if I can dissuade you from an artist you're bringing forward, it wasn't real passion in the first place. You've got to fight to sign an artist. You've really got to believe. I always say, like, bet your career on this signing, bet your house on it, or whatever. Just really, really believe in this artist.
There's a lovely story. I went to the Motown Museum in Detroit a few years back, and there's a lovely story that Berry Gordy used to say to his staff, if you had to buy this record or buy a sandwich and you were hungry, like, which would you choose? And if you can't choose the record, then we shouldn't be publishing
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Fab. And so let's talk about where you are now then. So after Boiler Room, what is your current role?
So at Boiler Room, I didn't start Don't Sleep. After doing various bits in my career, like Mercury Prize winning artists, I kind of felt that I didn't get my praises. So I said, okay, I'm going to start a new company, and it's called Don't Sleep, because I kind of felt slept on, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to really empower artists that I believed in that I couldn't sign before because they were being slept on, and myself. So, there were times when I couldn't sign Doja Cat, for instance. I was emailing her directly. She was keen to work with Bonobo on a record. And they were like, oh no, Doja Cat, who's she? She's not anybody. And now she's a massive star, right? I couldn't sign Chet Faker. He blew up. So, there were times when I really felt there were artists who were doing things or could have done things. So I said, okay, from now on, it's Don't Sleep.
I'm doing it my way.
I'm doing it my way, yeah. No more sleeping on artists.
Will you ever just be like, I told you so?
No.
That'd be terrible, that.
No, not really, because as well as signing artists, well, as well as almost signing artists that got away, I've signed some duds. I'm never going to get on there and say, why sign so-and-so? There are artists that I've signed that didn't work, and that's fine, because that's A&R. You always learn. What you shouldn't try and do at A&R, which everyone does anyway, is don't try and sign hits. Just sign what you love, because when you sign hits, it will never work. If you sign what you love, it may be a hit, but don't go for it because it's popular.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you say is like the common misconceptions about A&R? We've touched upon them perhaps in the past, about just being a people person is also really good, but...
I think everyone thinks A&R is just party, or, you're behind a big desk at a major label, like, yeah, sign that and throw a big check. It's actually a lot of nuanced work into A&R. Like I said before, it's people skills. A&R seems glamorous, right? You're kind of traveling the world. I would go to like the US to go and sign artists, even the US to go and hang out with an artist. Like I've been in LA just to hang out with an artist. And that's fun to go and do that. But it's really a lot of work. You've got to absolutely eat, breathe, and live music if you're an A&R. You've got to be able to connect with the artist on a music level that's genuine, you know. So it's not all glamorous. It can be lonely, but if you love music, it's definitely worth it.
And if someone is in this room, as we know from the application form, are excited to get into A&R, where would you suggest they start?
So years ago, right, I met a guy, when I was trying to get into A&R, because I was trying to get into A&R before being an A&R, I met a guy called Clive Black, and he was the youngest A&R, he was the youngest managing director of EMI at 30 years old. And Clive said, just do it. I was like, what do you mean, just do it? He goes, do it. So I was like, how do you do A&R without being employed and stuff? But what he meant was, go out and find new artists and then email labels about who you found. So if you want to be an A&R, just do it. We've got a young A&R scout here, actually, an intern guy here from Down Sleep, and he emailed us, and now he's working with us 1 day a week in our meetings, bringing us talent. So basically, just email labels, and if there's an opening, you'll know. If you've got a good ear, you'll know.
You talked about you knew you wanted to do A&R before you were even working in it. Like, what were your... what did you know about the industry at like 18? Because for me, I didn't have a clue.
Yeah, so I wanted to be an A&R once I learned about management and et cetera, et cetera. When I was 18, I was raised around reggae sound systems, one called Saxon in particular. And Saxon were known for like being pioneers in reggae. They basically like, a Wyclef Jean apparently, who's always part of the Fugees, he learned English from Saxon tapes when he was in Haiti. They've inspired Massive Attack, a lot of early artists. So I was always around music and studios, but it was very DIY. Artists like Maxi Priest, who was big in the 80s. But I never really saw it as an industry. I saw it as my dad's friends who were in the studio making reggae songs. I didn't actually see it for what it was, as a cultural movement part of the music industry. So when I found out about, like, I didn't know that there was somebody who'd sign artists and help them make their records. I thought it was them doing it on their own. You get Michael Jackson, he's got an idea for a song, all on their own, it comes out, it's all them. But no, there's a whole business behind it. So I really, when I found about A&R, it was the guy who ran Bad Boy Records. I'm gonna say his name, we know his name. No Diddy, we know his name. But he was actually a really good A&R. I was buying a lot of CDs back in the day, and I see his name in all the CDs. Like, who is this guy, Puffy Combs? He's everything that I'm reading, he's involved with Mary J. Blige, he's involved with Heavy D, he's involved with all these artists that I liked growing up. And he was an A&R, eventually, well, he was an A&R that showed me that job existed, in a way.
And what do you reckon has been your biggest surprise about the industry over the years?
Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
Right? Even the major labels don't know anything, and the major managers don't know anything. So what I mean by that is, if you manage the biggest artist in the world, you probably only got one artist of that size. If it was up to you, there'll be 10 on your roster of that size. So it's all a punt, it's all a gamble. You can't create success. Success comes from the artist. And I always tell artists, it doesn't matter if you're with the biggest manager or the biggest label. If it's your time, it's your time. So, you know, don't be fooled by the glitz and the glamour. Nobody really knows. It's all a punt. It's all a pitch. Everyone's trying to make a hit.
And before we go to questions, we've done a couple of tips already, but let's summarize your top 3 tips for people in this room.
Right. Number 1, network, network, network. You have to be out there. People have got to know you enough to be sending you demos. You've got to enter a room and they've got to be like, that's so-and-so from blah, blah record. You've got to be that person who wants to be in the mix. Number 2, be nice, right? A lot of A&Rs have a reputation of not being nice. Be nice, because it goes a long way, okay? And number 3, I guess, is basically love music. You have to love music. Don't try and chase hits, because it never, ever works. Love music, and so, yeah, network, love music, and be nice. It sounds very kind of, very surface level, but it's true.
That was fantastic. Right, we're going to go to the audience for some questions, please. Yep, do you want to stand up and shout? And I'll repeat the question if it's not loud. Okay, so I'll repeat the question for the room. So is it difficult in the digital world and the oversaturation of, 120,000 songs a day published to Spotify, for example?
I heard that there were more songs released daily this year than records released in 1989 as a whole year. mad, right? So that being said, no, because you can find artists on SoundCloud. You can find artists on Instagram. We found artists who we manage and sign on digital platforms. So yes, there's saturation. You just got to dig through it, which isn't a bad thing. You know, it's not harder. It's just the way it is.
Did you have a second question?
That's a great question.
Do you want to repeat the question?
Yeah. Do we prioritize a cultural shift over your ears? Good music's timeless. So if you've got I wouldn't say if you've got an artist who you like and there's now a cultural shift into a new sound, it's fine because if they're making good music, it's timeless. I think that it's definitely worth being aware of these shifts. And also, you could have an artist of a different genre and get a remix done in that new sound and test it anyway. So you can still be a part of that cultural shift without the artist making that music. There are ways around it by remixes, by collaborations. So, you know, you can be involved to that adjacent scene without being in that genre, if that makes sense.
Brilliant questions. Would anyone else like to? Yeah.
Now, I chill a lot now. A&R. Well, first of all, you've got to realise that it's a passion and you love it, but it's work, right? You've got to zoom out and look after yourself. We shouldn't be burnt out because you can't then do the work. So I think taking time and respite and holidays, even though I don't really go on holiday as much as I should, we need to do those things. And I think when you enjoy music, you can play it for pleasure at home as a fan and not try and analyze it and try and sign it. As long as you're a fan of music as an art form, you can enjoy it as a fan and sit back. Even enjoying new music as a fan, it's not always rush, sign. Just like I enjoy it or I can work with it. It's either or really.
I have a question as well. Sorry, I shouldn't ask. I've asked mine. Yeah, I'm going to come to the front. I can ask one at the end.
Seems like my career has been cherry-picked and a dream. Thank you. Has there been any roles that I've gone for that I didn't get? Early in my career, yeah. In fact, right, during Don't Sleep, I got offered my dream job. I started my company, and about 2 months in, I got offered my dream job. My favorite label, I'm not going to say who they are. I've been trying to work for them since I was 22. They offered me a head of A&R role, and I said no, because I started my own company, and I couldn't do it. And I was like, young me would have been gassed, and like, oh my God, I'm finally doing my dream job. But I said no, and me and the founder are friends, but I couldn't do it because it was now time for my vision and not being an A&R there. So I've turned down my dream role. But there have been times I've been to major labels in my early 20s trying to do A&R, and they were like, no, for some whatever reason. So then I was upset, but I guess it wasn't for me, and it makes sense. So yeah, I've been for roles that I didn't get, but it's fine. It's not a problem.
Right, we're going to go here, and then we're going to have to call it because we got the next panel coming up soon. Ooh,
Great.
So, do you want
So the question is, yeah, you've met A&Rs who said within 2 years you either love it or hate it. How do I maintain my passion for A&R? Do you know what? I think because I just love music, and it's a real, like I buy records, physical records on a weekly basis. I love music. I remember once in my life there was a lull, and I was like, oh, music. Oh my God, I can't take music. Only once. That was when I think I was about 24. I don't know what happened, but there was like a period in my life, like a month, when I was like bored of music. And looking back, I think I was just bored of what was out there.
We're going to close it out with this guy's question here before we move on.
Great question. So in the early days of me being an A&R, in the early days, it was my CEO who would do the dropping, you know, and it's like, they do it. And it's very emotional, you know, you're on the journey with an artist, and then it's not worked out after a couple of records. They're in the hole for several thousands of pounds, and they've got to go. It's not an overnight process, so they normally know it's not working after a while. So, you know, if you're friends with them, you can still be friends. And it's a very emotional journey which a lot of artists go through, and you're there to support them on that journey, really. It's not, I think at major labels, it can often be very cold and callous. But your manager, if they're wise and are in tune, they will know it's happening, and they will help the artist to deal with that process, by because normally how it works, the first step of it not going so well,